Hello everyone, I'm François Picard. It's a veteran politician's roll of the dice, putting his minority government to the test of a confidence vote. Centrist Prime Minister François Bayrou recalling France's parliament early on September 8th, ahead of an almighty budget battle. Unions had called for massive strikes 2 days later on the 10th, this against a spending plan that for now includes a major slash in benefits and the elimination of 2 national holidays.
Our country is in danger because we are on the edge of over-indebtedness. Over the past 2 decades, despite the succession of several governments of different political leanings, our national debt has increased by 2 trillion euros.
2000 milliards d'euros. La France ne peut pas ignorer ce danger.
France cannot ignore this danger. It cannot stand idly by. It is heading for disaster if it does not take the courageous but still possible and bearable decisions that are necessary and that we are debating.
Qui s'impose et que nous débattons.
The far left and the far right quick to state that they will vote to bring that minority government down. For more, let's cross to France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent. All that's left to know is whether the Socialists will push the vote of no confidence above the magic number in the French Parliament, 289.
That's right. We've been trying to do some quick parliamentary maths here in France. And the situation is so divided in French politics that no party or bloc of parties has an overall majority. So it's a real headache, has been for Emmanuel Macron and his Prime Minister, to try and get a government in place. And getting any kind of legislation passed is a huge headache, as we're seeing now. So in terms of being able to win a confidence vote, well, it's going to come down to the line, it looks like. Marine Le Pen's party on the far right, the National Rally, she's already said she is not voting for confidence, and their leader, Jordan Bardella, saying the same thing. They won't vote through this confidence vote. Then on the left, you've got the far left, La France Insoumise, France Unbowed. They've come out already and said they're not voting for it. It has the Communists, the Greens. So we're down to a handful of MPs, really. The Socialist Party among them, who are now among these smaller parties in the French Parliament. And so how many will turn up? How many will abstain? It's going to be a pretty tight political battle, it seems. François Bayrou has put his neck and that of his government on the line to try and get through the principle that France needs to make sweeping budget cuts to the tune of 44 billion euros. It's not clear whether he can make that. If he doesn't, his government will resign, and then France, once again, will be in another round of political chaos.
At 74, François Bayrou has been a mainstay of French politics for decades. This hobby horse of fiscal responsibility, as he puts it, is something he's been talking about for a long time. Tell us about the mood when he, again, made this roll of the dice, announcing this vote of confidence.
Yeah, it was a pretty dramatic speech that he gave today, especially by his standards. He's usually quite seen as an affable politician, but he had a very grave tone, and he spoke about the proportions of France's debt being a serious threat which weighs upon France, and talking again and again about French families, using that as a metaphor for how no one would let them get themselves so indebted. And at the end, wrapping up by saying we must think of France's children. We cannot leave them with a situation, with such a situation of crushing debt hanging over them. So he was really trying to make the case, I think, appeal to French citizens, not just the political parties we've been talking about, but calling on French citizens to take their responsibility and see that the hour is grave, the hour is serious. He also, I think, was trying to get in ahead of a movement, protest movements, which were planned for the 10th of September. There'd been calls for strikes to block the whole of France. So clearly, he wants to get in there first, and he's throwing down the gauntlet in this gamble. Now we just got to wait and see whether the French public have been listening and whether this will pay off.
Catherine Norris-Trent reporting live there. For more, let's go to the village of Cotignac in southern France. Renaud Foucart, a senior lecturer in economics at the the Lancaster University's Management School. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Hello, good evening.
What was your reaction when you heard François Bayrou, again, as Catherine just said, trying to get ahead of the game by announcing this recall of Parliament and this vote of confidence?
This is his moment, is it? Bayrou is the man of fighting the public debt in France. He's been talking about that forever. And this is the moment when he's pushing his agenda and he comes up by saying, I'm open. The only thing I want to do is those 44 billion of saving. Please make me suggestions. And his bet, originally, that has been successful since the beginning, is to say, I'm open to the far right and to the Social Democrats, and I'm willing to make concessions so that nobody dares to vote against him because they hope to get something in exchange. This time, it seems, and I find it quite surprising, that Le Pen is willing to try to make him fall, meaning that it's now a one-to-one between Bayrou and the Social Democrats. And he has things to offer them. They have a good relationship. Bayrou called personally to vote for François Hollande when he was against Nicolas Sarkozy for the presidential election. And he has some very visible policy, like cancelling 2 days of holiday and replacing them by work. This is something he could easily give up and give an easy win to the Social Democrats. So there is a chance, but this really goes to the wire, including with some small centrist party when you have a lot of people who are jockeying for position for the next presidential election in 2 years' time. And those people are very, very careful about their moves now. I don't really understand what Le Pen is doing. I think the Social Democrats will be very, very tight in their negotiation. But if I had to put my money somewhere, I would say he has a good chance of going through.
So if you're Marine Le Pen, you're looking ahead to 2027, which is the big prize, the French presidential election. And what better way to be unpopular than if there is a snap election and the National Rally then has to govern, which is something they wouldn't have to do until then.
Yes, and also they have the possibility, like the way the French constitution works, is that they don't have to vote for Bayrou. They just have to abstain and not show up, and it goes through. And also, we also know that Marine Le Pen, as from now, is not allowed to run at the next presidential election. So it would have been to be a Bardella prime minister, and you know that being presidential candidate as the prime minister in France is generally a recipe for disaster. They don't manage to do that because you have to be in charge of all those unpopular things. So I think it's a bit crazy. So I think Le Pen somehow is betting that the Social Democrats will help Bayrou, in which case she can be part of the people who are anti-establishment. But there is a long queue now. Like there will be this demonstration on September the 10th. Everyone will be there, like the Greens, the Communists, France Unbowed, Le Pen, all those people together. So it will be kind of a yellow jacket situation in which I don't think you have so much to gain from being among the general opposition. And there is a very clear sweet spot to take as the reasonable center-left person who has been in responsibility, but who will still sing a different tune than Macron in the next presidential election.
Now, there's 26 other members of the European Union. They're looking in. They see France's huge public deficit, which ballooned after COVID. What do you think that Brussels is going to make of it? What do you think the European Central Bank is going to make of it?
Well, right now, I think Bayrou is, again, a relatively wise person in the sense that he's seen as trying to make an effort. There will be, I think, some kind of mild panic if it's not Bayrou, if it's someone, like, there are a lot of people now in France who are in complete denial and say that there is nothing to do with the public finance. So they might be right in some point that Bayrou is taking a very grave tone of voice, and France, in terms of macroeconomic basics, they are a country that still sell a lot of things around the world. The basics are still okay, and France is not on the verge of collapse. But still, there is a big structural problem of debt. And if you replace Bayrou by someone who is not willing to acknowledge the problem, you might start to have a panic. And clearly, not only the European Union, but financial markets, bonds. This is if the cost of the debt starts to explode because nobody wants to buy French debt, Le Pen, Bardella, whoever is in charge will be in double level of trouble as compared to Bayrou.
You mentioned earlier the Yellow Vests movement, which began as a protest against a carbon tax that was scrapped. And it came from rural areas, people who need their car to get to work. Among those who are striking are taxi drivers for this upcoming September 10th day. Is there really this chance that it could be some kind of a Yellow Vests movement, or is it different this time?
The big difference is that there is no easy thing to give for Bayrou. So Macron, and this is one of the reasons, by the way, why there is a structural problem now, is that the fact that Macron had to cut the taxation of carbon is one of the reasons behind the deficit. But here, what can Bayrou give to a totally heteroclite amount of demonstrators? What is the obvious thing to give? Maybe those 2 days again, but this is the same kind of thing he could bargain with the Social Democrats. The truth is that Bayrou is understanding the fact that the voters in France are largely older people. The main reason, beside the lack of carbon tax for the French deficit, is aging population and the level of pensions in France. He's not going to cut that. He doesn't want to lose the little support he has. And so there is nothing easy, obvious to give to demonstrators. But people being angry is still something very dangerous. It's just not that clear to me who would benefit that. Maybe Le Pen, but maybe somebody else.
Stay with us, Renaud Foucart, because you mentioned those 2 holiday days, and you bill them as perhaps the low-hanging fruit in the negotiation. Brian Quinn has more on that.
As the French public braces for a rocky fall political season, the prospect of losing 2 paid holidays appears to hold little appeal.
On principle, it seems pretty unfair to me. These are days intended for rest and enjoyment, off of work.
I understand the need to make cuts and find money, but there is absolutely no social justice in this plan.
Recent polling shows 84% of French people are against the government's plan, even if they do accept the need to reduce the country's budget deficit.
I don't like the idea of leaving a lot of public debt for my kids. We have 2 war remembrance days. Why not just get rid of one in May? That seems appropriate to me.
France is far from the European champion of paid days off, that record held by Cyprus with 15 days a year. Spain and a handful of Balkan states have 14, with Portugal, Austria, Poland, and most of the Baltics close behind at 13. Under the new proposal, France's 9 holidays would put it at the bottom of the list, tied with Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. France's small business lobby says that if the reform goes through, it must apply to everyone, even kids.
Public services have to be open, particularly schools. If schools are closed, that's obviously a big problem. Our employees can't come to work because they have to watch their kids.
The country's top 7 labor federations, all of whom oppose the plan, are set to meet September 1st to plan their next steps. The government is hoping the move will bring 4.2 billion euros a year into its coffers starting in 2026. Economists, though, say a 2% wealth tax on the country's richest families, those with more than 100 million euros in net worth, would bring in 15 to 25 billion per year.
Renaud Foucart, we heard in that report that woman talking about the need for social justice. What percentage of the French do you see agreeing with her?
I think most people, the moment François Bayrou started to talk about that, he said, the French don't work enough, we need 2 more days of work. Very few people, me the first, believe he was going to talk about unpaid days. So if the idea was to pay people and to grow the economy and to have taxes paid, yes. But no, I think everyone agrees with the lady that it's a bad idea to squeeze the working people even more. But the alternative is what led to the fall of Barnier's government. The alternative is to decrease the highest pension in France. There are very, very high pensions for some people receiving 3,000–4,000 euros a month. This is something that is also a taboo. And a later age of pension has thrown thousands and thousands of people in the street. So people are very, very much willing to demonstrate against one specific cut. What Bayrou is telling them is, okay, I'm open, help me pick something. And the something has to be somebody else than the working people.
One final question for you. We saw François Bayrou last year elbow Emmanuel Macron after the previous government fell under Michel Barnier, saying, hey, give it to me or else. He's prime minister now, this position he'd been coveting for decades. How's he doing?
I think, given that his own objective, I assume, is to be the one who will save France from the debt, he's been extremely intelligent. So the big problem of Barnier is that he was only trying to get a deal with the far right. So he became an hostage of Le Pen, she played with him, and when she was tired, she just killed the government. Bayrou has been very clever, playing both sides. He's extremely unpopular. And I think he just wants to go to bed, go to history as someone who did something good for France. If he falls, of course, with this vote of no confidence, if France goes to chaos, then I will have to change my answer. If he actually managed to be the one who gives the key of France in 2027 to someone who will have a lower deficit, then I think he will be very proud of himself, although he will definitely remain very, very unpopular.
Renaud Foucart, so many thanks for joining us from southern France.
Thank you so much.